Så, oj, nu var det högt här i mikrofonen. Varmt välkomna. I will switch to English. My name is Katarina Blom and I'm a psychologist. I wrote a book on positive psychology which came out 2 years ago together with Sara Hammarkrans. And today I have the honor to talk to Emma Seppälä, which is not only a psychology professor but also head of research for the Altruism and Compassion Institute of Stanford. Yes, it's a long title.
I know, it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
I have to apologize for speaking English. I have a Finnish name, but my father never taught me Finnish, so.
We wouldn't understand Finnish that well.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you wrote this book in Swedish called lyckligare. And in the beginning you talk about how society endorses different myths around success and happiness. Would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, society gives us ideas that are commonly held, like you can't have success without stress, you have to look out for number one to get ahead, you have to look out for yourself. Myths like you have to constantly be living in the future, thinking about your next steps. And myths like the idea that you have to constantly focus on your niche, your area of work, in order to become the most successful person in that area. But if you look at the research again and again, those myths are incorrect, and we have the misconception that in order to be successful we have to sacrifice our well-being and our happiness. But if you look at the data again, it shows that the opposite is true. If we take care of our own well-being, we are more productive, more creative, we have better relationships, are more charismatic, make better decisions, and are more emotionally intelligent too.
So it sounds like we got the idea totally wrong, that success would give us happiness, but maybe it's the other way around.
Yes, and the reason I wrote this book is because I saw all around me people who were getting burnt out, had very high stress levels, and we're seeing that across the world, across countries, and it's because we're buying into this idea and we've put ourselves on the back burner. And again, if you actually do the opposite, you're going to do better. So I really wanted to bring this idea out for people to realize.
Yeah. And when you talk about stress, in the beginning of this book, I found it very interesting that you put in the foreword figures on Swedish data on how we as a people are doing stress-wise. And according to those figures, it said that between the years of 2012 and 2014, there was a 73% increase of people on sick leave because of stress. And that's insane. That's so many people that get affected by this myth about you have to strive, you have to do better in order to feel successful and be content with your life.
Yes.
And I understand that you have the same figures roughly the same in the US.
Absolutely. We're seeing very high burnout rates. But one of the reasons is stress is increased in our lives. So research shows that we are currently receiving 34 gigabytes of information every day. That's like 100,000 words a day. And that would crash a laptop in 5-6 days. Think about it. And we are living in these times that are more stressful. There is more coming at us. There are more demands because of technology. So the question is, what can we do? We can't move to an island somewhere and just relax all the time. And we're going to have stressors our whole life. So what can we do? We can boost our own resilience and our own well-being in very specific ways that are not so complicated. And that's what I dispel. One of the ideas is that we actually like stress. We think that in order to get things done, we have to have more coffee, we have to wait till the last minute to get things done. We overschedule ourselves. We always think that we need high adrenaline to get through a deadline or something. But the fact of the matter is, yes, a little bit of stress can help you move through a deadline, but over the long run, you're going to be exhausted and burn yourself out. your cognitive skills will decline, and so forth and so on. So what you can do, on the other hand, is doing simple exercises like breathing, meditation, and other calming things can actually make you more productive without burning out, without burning through your energy and your health and well-being. And it doesn't have to take a long time. Research shows that just a few minutes of deep breathing where you lengthen your exhales will reduce your heart rate in minutes. Those are little things you can do throughout the day. So I'm sharing things that we can all include in our life, not suggesting some radical life change, which we can't do.
Yeah, I really appreciated that about your book, that you keep coming back to the very simple habits in everyday life. Like, how can we keep doing things, but maybe in another way, with a different quality or taste to it. And in this book, you mention 6 ways to increase satisfaction and well-being in your life. And it seems like to me that there was like a common thread throughout these 6 ways that all emphasized maybe slowing down and finding stillness, or finding breathing space, like you said, doing breathing exercises in order to see the colors or live more fully. And this makes me think about the negativity bias and the positivity bias. Would you like to talk about how these two influence our well-being?
So during a given day, research shows we have 3 times more positive experiences than negative experiences. But it takes one bad thing, one email, one coffee spilled on your shirt, something that all of a sudden turns your day into this terrible day. But if you think about it, you've probably had a meal today, you've probably slept last night, you probably have a roof over your head, you have the time to be here, sit here and listen to people talking. That means a lot of things are going right, but it takes one thing to sour our day. And that's what the negativity bias is. And having that awareness of that already helps. But something other that really is very useful in those moments is gratitude. And gratitude is simply remembering all of the things that are going right. And by doing so, you actually become more realistic. You actually become more uplifted, and you uplift the people around you as well. So that's just what the negativity bias is, and just like a very simple way to just switch your perspective. That's very useful, because after all, who wants to have someone negative around first? But secondly, when you are feeling happier, you're actually more productive, you're more creative, and you have better relationships with people in general, as you experience in your own life. The other thing is that people think happiness is selfish. Why should I take time for me? I have my kids, I have my work, I have my this, my that. But research shows that if you're happier, then 3 degrees of separation around you are happier. So if you're happier, then your husband's colleague's child is happier. Does that make sense? 3 degrees of separation away. So actually, I would argue that happiness is one of the most selfless things you can act. An act of service for the entire community around you is to be a person who uplifts others. And that can sound fuzzy and whatever, American maybe. But the idea here is that you all know, everyone here knows someone who, when they walk in the room, they just uplift everyone. They make them laugh. And when you leave their presence, you feel better. You don't know why, but you feel lighter. And we all have the choice. We can all be that for the people around us. So even if you feel like, oh, well, if I take care of my happiness, that's selfish. It is not selfish at all. It's probably one of the greatest acts of service you can do for people around you.
And you also describe how being self-centered can be damaging your opportunities for well-being. And sometimes society encourages us to be self-centered and like push our way into working life and taking up our space. And there's a World Value Survey saying that Sweden is actually the most individualistic country in the world. So I'm thinking we Swedes really need to hear this message. And in the book also you talk about an alternative to being self-centered, which would be to be more compassionate.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about that?
Well, first of all, even if you're very individualistic, does not mean that you're selfish. So individualistic just means that your identity is tied to you more than a community. But it doesn't mean you're selfish, so that's good news for the Swedes. But that said, this society tells us that we need to look out for ourselves. And society tells us you have to, first and foremost, watch out for your own self. But the problem with that is research shows that when we are more helpful, when we support others, when we are when we go out of our way to contribute in whatever way we can to the people around us, we are actually more successful at work. You know, assuming you don't let people take advantage of you, so you have to be smart about it. But you're going to be more successful and do better. But not just that, you'll be happier, and you'll also be healthier. You recover from disease faster, and your longevity increases. It's absolutely amazing. In one study, looking at people who were very stressed, they found that most people, when they have a very high stress level in their life due to some traumatic event, they live for shorter period of time. But this is not true for people who engage in some kind of altruistic motivation in their life. So you don't have to go, you know, feed orphans in Somalia or anything crazy. But even every day having that intention, let me be kind to the people around me. Let me see what I can do for my colleagues, my neighbors, my friends. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but that simple shift in your mindset will improve your well-being. But again, also that of the people around you and help you at work. So.
Oh, sounds really good.
Yeah.
And also you talk about being kind to yourself in the book.
And so we often have no problem being kind to others, but it's harder for ourselves. And self-criticism is something that we think is a good thing because we think self-criticism leads to self-improvement. There's no doubt that self-awareness is good. Know your weaknesses and so forth. But the problem with self-criticism is you have someone beating you up in your head all day long. That's a problem because research shows that self-criticism makes you more anxious and depressed, and you're less likely to learn and grow from your failures. But there's an opposite tendency which is much more healthful, and that's self-compassion, which research shows leads you to be happier, healthier, but also grow from your mistakes and from your failures and challenges. And what that means is self-compassion is nothing but the voice you would use when you speak to your best friend and they've just failed at something. What do you say to them versus to you when you fail? To them, you're probably going to normalize the situation, say, everyone makes mistakes like that sometimes. It's no big deal. You're going to be kind to them. And you're also not going to go into a big emotional drama about it. You're going to try and make it lighter. Self-criticism adds more negativity to your already negative emotions. Do you see? And self-compassion has been shown to make you much more resilient. You bounce back from situations. You're able to grow and learn. It's a very beautiful fact. And so again, that's one way that, you know, we have this myth about self-criticism, but self-compassion comes in much more handy.
That's very promising to hear, at least to me. I think this is really because it's so very in reach for everyone. We don't need to buy something to learn self-compassion, for example, or to be compassionate towards others.
Yep.
And I found it very interesting. You talk in the book about in the West, we tend to encourage and strive for very intense, high positive emotions, while in more Eastern cultures, they value more of maybe a subtle positive emotion.
Yeah. So if you ask Westerners, Americans in particular, but I think it's true here too, to define happiness, they use words like excitement and thrill. But if you ask people in East Asia, China, Japan, Korea, they will say words like calmness and serenity. And there's nothing wrong with feeling excitement and thrill, and but just like stress, it activates your fight or flight response. It does activate your stress response to always be in a very high intensity mode. So people value stress at work when they're trying to achieve, and then they value high intensity when they're out and about, which, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're always taxing your fight or flight stress response, and you're burning through your energy. So people wonder, why am I so tired at the end of the day? All I did was sit on my backside behind a computer. There's been so much high intensity, both through the stress that you're, like the caffeine and everything we're doing to amp ourselves up, and then in our personal lives that we're exhausting our nervous system. And that's why then people need more coffee, or then they're more always looking for more stimulants, more sugar, more something to stay awake. But again, this is where we've got it wrong, and we need to learn to manage our energy. Like, there's nothing wrong with feeling excited and thrilled and a little stressed sometimes, but what you want is to balance that with moments of calmness and peacefulness, because that's like plugging in your phone so you can get your energy back. Your parasympathetic nervous system allows you to repair your body. Yeah.
I love how you over and over again almost praise just doing the dishes or doing very mundane activities in your everyday life, and how this can be an important resource for recharging or resetting your focus. And you also speak about yourself, that you had an operation which pulled you into 2 weeks of sick leave, where you had to slow down and do nothing.
Yeah.
And how that encouraged you to see life a bit differently.
Absolutely. So we know from research that our mind wanders 50% of the time. So even now, while you're listening to me, how many people have had their mind wander somewhere else? Okay, good. That means you're normal. That happens 50% of the time. We are not with what we are doing. That's a lot of time. And where are we? We're either in the future thinking, well, what am I going to have for dinner? Where am I going to go after this? Or what's on my to-do list? What am I not getting done? How many emails do I need to respond to? Or the mind's in the past thinking, did I say the wrong thing? Or, you know, what that person did the other day was not so great. Whatever, where our mind's in the past. But the problem is that more negative emotions are associated with thoughts of the future. Anxiety, fear, thoughts of the future, as well as the past. So anger or regret, thoughts of the past. We are never more happy than in the present moment. There's a research study that showed that in this study, people had BlackBerries, and they were pinged throughout the day, and they were questioned, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? What are you feeling? So they want to see, are the people thinking about what they're doing, and how does that make them feel? They saw that you are never happier than when you are in the present moment, even when you're doing something you don't like to do. So so doing something silly like focusing on the dishes while you're doing them, and meditation, and breathing exercises, it helps to bring your mind back into the present. And when you're back in the present, you feel more positive emotion. So you've experienced this. If there's been something you really don't want to do, it could be the dishes, the laundry, your taxes, whatever, and you wait and wait and wait, and finally you just do it. You clean your house or whatever it is, and you're doing it, and all of a sudden you're feeling good. Especially when you're on a deadline and you don't want to do this thing and you have to do it, and all of a sudden you're in the flow of the moment. There's a better feeling. But also when you're in the moment, you're going to, of course, be more productive. Of course, you're going to think more clearly because you're with what you're doing, and you're going to get things done. And you're going to be more charismatic. People think that charisma is a God-given gift, something special. But if you ask people what they experience with charismatic people. For example, Bill Clinton is someone that people always said is so charismatic. Then you ask people, well, what was it like to meet him? They say, I felt like I was the only person in the room. Why? Charisma is nothing but your undivided, full attention. And it is the greatest gift you can give to anyone, because who feels like they're listened to these days? You talk to people and they look at you and then their eyes are wandering, or they're on their phone. They're 50% of the time, they're not with you anyway. So when someone is actually with you, it's stunning. And that is charisma.
And you tend to, you have an impressive title where you work now. It seems like you've done a lot in your life, and right now you're in this hectic book tour for a week around this book. So what do you do to keep your calm? And
I definitely have experienced everything that I've written about, and I'm writing it because I want to help, because I've seen the pain. I've seen the pain in Silicon Valley. At Stanford, when I was a graduate student, there were 3 suicides my first year, most beautiful campus on earth, from all the stress. And we're reaching a point where we need to address the situation of burnout, anxiety, stress. It's everywhere. And technology's just made it more intense. So we need a solution. And that's why for example, meditation has been increasing in popularity. Why? We're in this extreme 34 gigabytes a day experience. We're in a situation of extreme stimulation, you need an extreme solution, which is sit with your eyes closed, do nothing, which is meditation, which is extreme. But in a sense, we need it right now. Some things like that. We need to just unplug, go into nature, get away from your phone, and just be. Because our nervous system cannot handle it. Our nervous system cannot be overly taxed and overly stressed in fight or flight all the time. We're seeing the impact on our health. 80% of doctors' visits in the US are attributed to stress. So, but the thing is, there are solutions. We don't have to move to the desert or a desert island or whatever. We just have to really listen to the data and the science about what it is that leads to greater resilience, that leads to greater energy management, and that allows you to have a life that's productive, yes, but also fulfilling, happy, and healthy too.
Thank you very much, Emma Seppälä, for this short interview and insight into your book. I can very much recommend this. It's very anchored in science and at the same time very applicable to everyday life. So there's full of practical tips, breathing exercises and more things. Thank you again very much.
Thank you.